Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and I just opened up the webinar session, so we'll go ahead and let people start getting logged in and getting set up, and then we'll get started to make some introductions. So good morning for those of you that are in maybe the West Coast, Mountain Time Zone. Good afternoon for those of you Central and East. My name is David with Managed Methods, and we'll get started here momentarily with the third-party app security webinar. Coming to you live today from Boulder, Colorado, the home of Managed Methods, and I can tell you that it's a spectacular, glorious day. Nice autumn day, late September day here in Colorado. Some blue skies and sun. So maybe a little unseasonably warm. I think we're supposed to be up in the 80s today, they're saying. So we'll get started momentarily. I see folks rolling in. The attendee list is popping up here. Just as a quick data check, I want to make sure, Charles, you can just nod your head. Can you see the screen up there? Obviously, you can hear me okay. All right, well, then well, all right, we're a minute past the hour here, so we'll go ahead and get going, and as folks join in, we'll get things started. Again, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Waugh. I'll be your host here with Managed Methods. And today's webinar is a part of our ongoing series for sharing advice, best practices, and just getting discussions going about cybersecurity, safety, etc. Today's topic, third-party app security. And third-party app security, of course, is an important one, especially for those of you that are out there in the cloud world and using connected apps. And we're going to be talking about that today, and how your organization can audit your district's third-party apps that are connected to your environments for cybersecurity risks, student safety, student data privacy. Very, very big topic right now, especially for those of you that might be in the Google Workspace world. I know that there's a lot of discussion around third-party apps in that arena. So we'll go ahead and get underway. Just some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. So if you want to try, if you're trying to take screenshots or notes, you want to look back at something, don't worry, you will get a recording of the webinar. Usually takes about 24 hours from the time the event completes, but every now and then Zoom might be a little bit slower in processing it. But worst case scenario, by early next week, if you should get a copy of the recording. So again, you'll get a link. This is being recorded. All attendees are muted, but feel free to ask questions in the chat Q&A panels. So please be active, put out questions for our panelists, or if you have suggestions or comments that you want to share, feel free to throw those out there as well. Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and kind of get underway here. Our agenda today is, again, focused on third-party apps that are connected into your district's Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace environments, whether the apps are being installed on mobile devices, school-issued devices, whether it's a Chromebook, an iPad, a Mac, a PC, an Android phone, an iOS phone, you name it. However, third-party apps get connected into your domain that are using credentials or access controls coming in through your workspace and or Microsoft 365. And then we'll get into a demonstration of how we do things here in this arena at Managed Methods, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. But before we jump into all that thing, the best part about these webinars is we always try to bring in your peers, people who are there in the trenches, working in districts on technology. And I'm excited today to have two of our friends with us, Chris and Tyler. So we'll start with you. Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about your district, your role, responsibility, et cetera, and then we'll have Tyler do that.
All right. I'm Chris Peterson. I'm Director of Administrative Technology Support here in Texas. We're in Central Texas, where it is a beautiful day, but very hot again and again and again. We have a district of about 23,000 students. We are one of the fastest growing districts in Texas for sure, if not the nation. Everybody wants to come to the Austin area, apparently. We're okay if they don't. And part of the thing that I do, I started with setting up all Google accounts by hand manually. and it has evolved to, syncing it, and we've just grown so fast, so quick that it's we're running into some issues. So I'm here to tell you what our pain points have been and how we're slowly resolving those.
And Hayes Consolidated Independent School District. You're on the kind of the southwestern metro area of Austin.
Yes, we're just south of Austin.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thanks, and thanks for joining us today, and appreciate you being with us. Let's head north, straight up north from Texas, up Chicago.
Yeah, so my name is Tyler Derrickson. I'm the Cybersecurity and Systems Admin for Arbor Park School District. We are in the south suburbs of Chicago. I started here about 2 years ago. And Managed Methods was actually one of the first products that I was able to get my hands on. And speaking of third-party apps, that was one of the first things that I focused on, kind of getting under control. So I think this discussion today will be really good. And I think I'll be able to shed some insight on what we've been able to do to kind of keep our network secure and our best practices that we enforce for third-party apps.
Well, thanks for joining us, Tyler. What's the temperature up there? Is it Texas hot, or are we getting nice autumn weather in the Chicago area?
It's a little bit warmer than I feel like is usual for the time. It's about probably 60s today.
Well, we're in between the two of you, so I can't complain. Again, beautiful autumn day here in Colorado, just outside the Rocky Mountains. Well, thanks, Tyler and Chris, for being with us. And then, of course, I've got my colleague here, Mr. Charles Mogan. Charles is going to be facilitating our demonstration. Charles, tell the audience here your role and responsibility and how long you've been with Managed Methods.
Absolutely. My name is Charles Mogan again. I'm the Senior Product Specialist here at Managed Methods. So I'm work day to day with our customers here, make sure things are running well on the platform with them, and know the Managed Methods platform quite well there. And I've been with Managed Methods since 2019 there. So quite a while at this point. Yes, it has been a while. And family of educators too. Your both parents were in the school district, so Charles kind of grew up in the ranks of that. Well, thanks all of you for being here. Let's go ahead and kind of jump in. So what I'll do is I'm just going to stop sharing the screen because we don't have slides. We're going to get into more of a casual presentation here. So I'll just turn off the screen share for now if I can. We'll see if it actually does that. Struggling with that, so we'll leave it on right now. Is the screen share going away now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All righty. Well, so third-party apps. I'll start with you, Chris. Over the last several years, obviously we went through a major change and shift in the way we kind of looked at technology and how learning was delivered in the classroom when we went through the global pandemic in 2020 and into 2021. I think, for the most part, things are going back to normal, but there was an explosion of the number of third-party apps that were being used in technology. So how has the use of education technology and, third-party apps specifically changed or evolved over the past few years? And how are you seeing this impact student data privacy and security issues and challenges that you face there at Hayes?
Well, of course, you hit the nail on the head. The pandemic just made things explode. And as we were trying to just keep things at a semi-new normal pace, we were just letting whatever extensions and third-party apps, we were just slamming them in to try to keep things flowing. So it turned into be a really big problem. And we weren't even really thinking about the privacy at that point in time. They needed it to get going. So we were just trying to keep the classes going. And now it just seems like as many apps as come on the market, then you start having those privacy problems because some of the apps are they're not really good. They're not out there to be good. They're out there to get that information and to do harmful things for our kids and all this other stuff. So we're having to really pull the reins back a lot just for that, just because it's just been such a crazy, the way we started, and now we're having to stop and turn around and go back on it. It's been a hard deal. It's been a really hard deal. And some of the teachers are going to get really mad because we're kind of turning apps off, but it's because of the privacy agreement. As you know, we're in the Austin area. We're a high-tech area. And these parents ask, they ask, hey, we're looking at this privacy agreement. This isn't good. So we get questions from parents asking us, this data privacy agreement, I don't like it. And I'm like, you're probably right. We need to get this one out. So we get calls from parents asking about that kind of stuff too. So which is, that's good for them.
Well, they're on top of it.
Yeah.
Tyler, how about with Arbor Park?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic for sure really accelerated how many apps were being used because everybody was trying to essentially take advantage of the fact that everything's moving online, everything's going to be cloud-based now, everything's moving to the cloud. And so all these apps started, peppering school districts with advertisements, and we can do this and we can do that, offering all of these, services. And especially teachers and admins like to take advantage for the students, of course. But like Chris said, security and privacy was kind of an afterthought. So now a lot of school districts are trying to keep that under control. And in Illinois, what helped us keep that under control was SOPPA, so the Student Online Personal Protection Act. And now all of our apps have to be vetted, and they have to sign our SOPA agreement to keep that student data safe. So that's what really helped us. But I know it's been a big struggle because the pandemic for sure accelerated the third-party app usage.
And I believe that, if my memory serves me correct, I think that's how we got involved with your district in the first place a few years back, was because of SOPA and when that got passed. And of course, you raised a good point, and this is kind of across the country. Texas has certain laws on the books. Illinois, many states are now getting more and more laws in place about student data privacy. And it boils down to the apps about. And that's, and I think schools, a lot of schools, from what you both have told me before, other customers I meet with, they're playing catch up from what happened during the pandemic. Again, I don't have the exact statistics right in front of me, but I think the last time I saw some study on it was, it was a 4x the number of apps. We've gone into some districts where they've shared with us, oh yeah, here's our, speaking of SOPA, Tyler, I remember we came into one district in Illinois that produced a vetted list from their privacy officer, and it was like 128 apps or so. And then they went in and used our platform to analyze it, and they discovered well over 400 connected apps. So there's, and I think probably for a disclaimer for the audience out there, what we're talking about specifically when we say apps here in this conversation today, any extension, application, piece of software, etc., that gets installed and is granted an OAuth token through your domain. So in other words, people are trying to log in and they access the app through your Google Workspace environment, your Microsoft 365 environment, or they're using the credentials of it. So it could be a personal app that I've installed on my cell phone. It could be a fantasy football app that I install on my personal cell phone, but I use my Arbor Park School District credentials to sign up. It's some people call it the lazy login, where it's like, oh, just use, where the box pops up and says, you want to use your Google Workspace login instead of creating a unique username and password, as an example. So this can be any kind of application, whether it's for the classroom, whether it's a personal app, and we'll get into some of the maybe concerns of more, not appropriate apps. So Tyler, I'm going to stay with you then. So speaking of these types of apps, what are some examples of third-party apps that have created issues, problems, concerns for your district, whether it be data privacy concerns or just, hey, these aren't appropriate, they shouldn't even be here? What kind of apps?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the ones that were of concern to us were like social media ones. Those ones, students are trying to use their district provided credentials to log into different social media sites. And obviously everybody knows that social media isn't always the greatest place for students to be on, especially during school days and things like that. So, those we like to restrict because, we don't want district data essentially being held by those third parties that haven't signed our agreement, like I said. So there's a process that we have for specifically staff to request software so that we can vet it, so that I can take a look at their privacy policies and say, okay, this will probably be a good one. But you know, the ones that cause problems for us are the ones that don't want to sign our SOPPA agreement, or the ones that we find that are being used with district credentials that weren't approved. So,
Chris,
Games.
games.
So many games. So, and that's the easiest thing for those kids is to get on those games. And just like you said, it pops up and they're on their Chromebook or whatever before they were blocked, and they just connect that account and they can't get to them now. So we blocked it through our filter. So even if they have them installed or whatever, they can't get to them anymore on our devices. But, you know, I'm having to go back now and revoke all that access, which is so much easier now with managed methods. So, you know, we got it figured out on the filter side. And so now it's a matter of just going back and pulling back all those rights out of those accounts on the managed method side. But yeah, and you know, of course the social media is always a big concern, just because it's just out there and you can't turn it down. Discord, things like that can be inappropriate, as well as social media, as well as games, as well as everything. So there's just a lot of stuff out there. You know, a lot of the teachers too will see some of these games, you know, the math games that look like they're going to be great for their kids. But when you start looking at them, like Tyler said, you start looking at them, you're like, this is not good. You know, this is just it's not going to be good for the data privacy. It might be great math wise, but for the privacy side of it on the students, it's not good. And that's a hard discussion to have with teachers, because they're not even thinking on that. They're like, but it shows good math stuff. And I'm like, but we got to protect this side too. So that's been a big thing with all these apps, is try to get that through to the teachers. Not that it's a good thing, but maybe it's a helpful thing. That we had some hacks happen with our staff email this year that was very bad. So the teachers have experienced some bad stuff happening. And so now when I say, hey, this could hack their stuff, they're like, okay, get it. So that's never a good thing, but it actually kind of brought some awareness to it and brought it to the forefront.
So, you know, clearly there's a lot of different types of apps that can come into your environment. And third-party applications can be popular and valuable tools in the classroom. So do you have any tips for our audience? And I'm going to start with you, Chris, stay with you. Do you have any tips for the audience on how to vet resources that would be the apps that you want in? How do you go about that at Hayes?
Well, we started this with just regular software, because we knew we had to vet software on these people go to these conferences and come back from TCA with their disk and go, well, we need this. So we started with a software approval system, and we've actually now expanded that to an app extension also approval. We haven't gone so far as to do the agreement with them, which I'll probably get with Tyler later and try to say, hey, how do you do that stuff? Because that's a great idea. But we do that with our software. We make them sign the National Data Privacy Agreement with our software. That anything that we roster, we do that for sure. But we haven't done it with our apps. We do make it go through the privacy agreement. We do have some of our network guys will check at the backside, look at their privacy agreement. We have some curriculum people that will actually look at it and go, is this beneficial on the curriculum side? If it's not, we don't need it. As much as we want Starbucks coffee to be an approved app, is it really educational? It might be needed, but we go through, we have a process that we've been doing probably the past, we started at the end of last year when we really started looking at all these apps. And then we had to get, we have multiple people that can get in there. So if they don't email, they'll email me and say, can you open it? And if I say no, then they email the next person. It's like, go to mama, go to daddy, go to whoever to see who's going to open it. And we finally got consistent of no, they need to get it approved first. So we have an approval process.
A process in place, some way, shape, or form. And,
yes.
And, obviously
they fill out a ticket. They fill out a work ticket.
Good. Well, it's good that you have something in place first.
Yes.
Tyler, so what tips, how do you guys vet these types of resources that you're going to allow, say, teachers, educators to use in the classroom?
Yeah, so for us, we have a form that they fill out, and then we get that notification, and then we can review it from there. And like Chris said, we have, the curriculum director. She can take a look if we need help being like, hey, is this even going to add value? There's so many of these products out there where we need to check for redundancy in the classroom. What has already been purchased, what has already been paid for, that is being utilized, and is this even necessary for us to implement? Is that a risk that we're willing to take? Is it worth it? But I think the other side of it is kind of like the human factor, kind of creating that culture in your district to even get your staff and admin on board of getting privacy and security to the forefront. We've had staff try to recommend software and apps to us, and they already put in the form, they'll sign the SOPPA agreement, they'll sign the privacy agreement. So I think that we've done a good job at facilitating that culture, and I think it'll only get better as more and more of them kind of catch on that, hey, this is a really big issue. I mean, every headline you read every day, some big corporation's getting hacked, and school district data is definitely a big ticket item for people. So yeah, I'd say culture, and we also have a formalized process for vetting.
Well, good. And obviously I know Arbor Park does, because we've gone through it with you before as a part of SOPPA and some other things. I know Illinois kind of got forced into that route a few years back. Tyler, stay with you and on that topic of like SOPPA, data privacy, because you've had to go through it. What steps can districts take to make sure that they are properly sharing student data with vendors in a way that's secure and compliant? So let's talk on that topic.
Yeah, sure. So in our SOPPA agreement, I keep talking about SOPPA because it's so huge in Illinois, but so I hope that anybody, whatever state that you're in, can implement some of these same things, because it touches a lot. So in our SOPPA agreement, there's check boxes of what data are they taking, what data are they processing, where is it being stored is another one. I think all the data has to be stored in the US. It can't be overseas in a different, data center, wherever. So I think that is huge, because it tells us, what are they taking? What are their processes of securing it? And is it compliant with SOPPA? Because that form, breaks it down very easy for us to read. So that makes it really easy for us to see if student data is with those vendors, what data is with them, and the security of it.
Chris, how do you guys go through that? What is your suggestion on how to properly share that?
We look at that too. And I can tell you, just me as a busybody, I guess, one of the things I do is I look at the data they're taking, and I'll question why they're taking what they're taking. If there's something out there that they're saying that they're collecting, sometimes I'll just say, why do you need this? Because, we're not willing to share that piece of data, whatever it is, just whatever they may need. The good thing is in our Google accounts, we don't put too much information into those accounts as far as backside user information. So then it's just going to be a matter of, what might be in their Google Drive that they're going to have access to their Google Drive and stuff. And we're kind of like Tyler on that. We're trying to teach not only our staff, but we're trying to teach the kids too, to watch what they save in their Google Drive, make sure it doesn't have too much PII. And we have some settings on when they save stuff with PII in it to try to block that. So we're trying to kind of keep that stuff out of the Google Drive as much as possible, just to kind of help alleviate some of that stuff, because a lot of those just want access to Google Drive because they're going to connect to that and do whatever they're going to do. So, if we can keep some of that stuff out of their Google Drive, maybe that helps also.
So I asked the audience, I put a poll out there asking first, a few minutes ago, I asked, what is the most challenging types of apps they're dealing with? Was it sexually explicit? Is it gaming, shopping apps, social media, you name it? And overwhelmingly, the response was shopping, gaming, those types of apps seem to be the number one challenge. And then on this topic, Chris, that you just answered, and Tyler, I asked, about a vetting process. And somewhat shocking, but not shocking, is that I asked the question, does your district have a vetting process for third-party apps allowed? 51% said no, they don't have a vetting process in place for third-party apps. 39%, we got 39% said yes, we do. And I love it. People out there that are having some fun with me this morning, I said, or what is a vetting process? You mean a Corvette? And thank you. There's 6 people that jumped on that one for me. I appreciate it. But not surprising, because when I've presented at the TETL, the Texas Education Conference down there, Chris, with you, we saw that same kind of, straw poll results where people were like, no, we don't have a vetting process in place because we don't really know how to manage third-party apps, because unfortunately there's not a lot of the native tools leave a lot to be desired. So that's of course a challenge. Well, let's stay with you, Chris, then. So on that topic, what is your district look for with potential new vendors and partners in terms of privacy policies or data retention or security rules, or what is it that, in your vetting process that maybe specifically you look for? Is there any a minimum you're looking for, or maybe is there like a red flag that you're like, we got to see this?
Well, of course, our network guys will, our cybersecurity guys will check it, and they'll do kind of research on things. Is it hitting overseas, things like that. So they'll look at that side of it. It's, for our regular software programs, because we haven't started this with our third-party apps yet until I steal the the Illinois SOPPA one. So we have the National Data Privacy Agreement where they have to specifically say what they want shared with them. And when they check that this is what we want shared and this is why we're going to share it and stuff, that is, by goodness, all we do. When they come back and go, well, now we need, I'm like, well, you're gonna have to re-sign this because that's not how it works. So we're, I'm a stickler on that for our big programs and stuff. And so we're just going to have to take that process and move it over to our third-party apps and extensions and stuff with that also. And that, that's easy enough. The biggest thing is just kind of getting it all under control. I mean, this all happens so quick that I'm sure everybody's out there is just like, my God, we just have to get a handle on top of it and get on top of it, and then kind of start over with our vetting process again.
Yeah, it can be a daunting and complicated thing. And you mentioned a key area, the National Data Privacy Agreement through the Student Data Privacy Consortium. We've been longtime partners with that organization, and we are signees, if you would, of that, not only in Texas, but many states that we work in, of course. So good to hear. Tyler, we'll stay on that topic. What do you specifically look for? And again, I know you've really gone through this intensively because of the Illinois law, SOPPA.
Right. So I agree with Chris, for sure. I think, because I've been the one to review their privacy policies. And the one thing that I look for, especially if we're going to move forward, is transparency. If they aren't willing to be transparent on what data they're taking, how they're processing it, things like that, to me, that's a red flag. If you're truly about privacy and security for the students, there should be no reason that you can't be transparent with the district on what data you're collecting and how you're processing it. So if they're not willing to sign the SOPPA agreement, or they're not willing to make amendments, like Chris kind of mentioned earlier, if we push back and say, why are you taking this data? And they're not willing to amend, then we're not going to move forward, because it's not worth the risk. So I'd say transparency is something I definitely look for, because if they're not, I think that's just a red flag. So
this is spurred some action from the audience here. So we're going to take a few live questions before we go into some further questions here and then get to the demo. Obviously, third-party apps is a big deal, but states vary in how they are. There's of course, National Data Privacy Agreement, but then there's different rules. And even within the same state, I know there's different ways that schools in Texas address things, just down the street from each other. Right. So the first question that has popped up here from Stephen to, and I'll have, Tyler, you go first. do you use state vetted vendor lists? Is there such thing? Is there a state vetted list, like in Illinois?
I'm not actually too familiar if there's a state vetted list, at least not that I have seen. I know that one of my colleagues also has a huge part in SOPPA, so he may know better. But I know that we look extensively on any list that we can see. Talk to other districts. That's another one that we do to know who's using it and if it's been good with them. What is their agreement? So, but a state sponsored list I think would be good to take a look at for sure.
Chris, is there a state vetted approved list in Texas, or is it
There's not for third-party apps that I've seen. There's not for third-party apps. I mean, what we do on programs. So if a program that usually they have an app associated with it, if it's a state program or state, the state's paying for the program and stuff, we usually kind of go with the state and say, well, surely the state has gone through this and looked at this and decided that the privacy agreement is good. So we're not as hard on those state funded programs that have an app, third-party app associated with it. TETL is looking at doing some privacy agreement collaboration stuff where if one district gets a privacy agreement, we can piggyback off that. And I think that will probably end up extending to third-party apps because it's become such a big deal that I'm thinking that will probably extend to that. And that way, if some district down the road, Plano or something, they get something signed from one third-party app or company, I can go in and look at that and go, okay, they've signed, we can piggyback off that and they can go from there. So that's, I don't see a lot of people having that yet, but I think that's something that this has become so big. I think it's going to evolve and happen.
Right. And that's kind of the process of the National Data Privacy Agreement with the Student Data Privacy Consortium is just that. So that, if one district's gone through all the legwork to vet and approve and validate, then people can help each other out with that. And with that mentioned, I'll put a plug out there for the resource registry, the national database from the Student Data Privacy Consortium. It's got vendors that have already been vetted in some aspect from a data privacy perspective. Let's be clear about that. It's data privacy. Data privacy and cybersecurity permissions are completely different animals. So it's apples to oranges. So you got to keep in mind, just because you might have legal T's and C's in place with somebody, you still have to vet and see that what are the permissions and scopes and privileges that this particular app has from a security perspective. So more questions rolling in. We'll stay on this. So this is another good one that pops up. Chris, we'll start with you. Even asked the question, how do you handle apps that require parental permission, if at all?
Those I go straight back to the teacher and and actually I'll tell you, when teachers ask me initially, hey, we want this app, one of the things I do is try to put it back on the teachers to make them, this is our, we're in education, our education part of it. And I go back and ask them, I go, did you look at the privacy agreement? What do you see? Have you really decided that you want to go through with this? Because you're going to have to do a lot of legwork on this also, because I don't, it's not fair for just a Tyler to do it all or just our network guys to do it all. The teachers need to be aware of what data they're taking, because, parents are going to ask them those questions. So they need to be aware of that and know how to handle those questions as they come. As far as parental, I've never really, we have the 13 and up and things like that. Those we would have to get permission from the parents before we move forward. I mean, that's just, we would do that if they really needed this third-party app or this program to, education won't happen without it, then that's something that would have to happen. We haven't run into one of those yet, but I would make the teacher, we'd come up with a permission form, we would store them, and then we'd move forward and only push them out to those people, those kids, that group. We'd have to make a group, push it out to that group.
That one certainly is a slippery slope. I know that that also varies. I've heard that conversation all across the country when I've presented at conferences, and I know that one's a slippery slope. Tyler, what's your thoughts on that? How do you guys address that if that pops up?
Yeah, honestly, I would agree with Chris. And I would also talk to the curriculum director as well, because I know that, is this, again, I keep talking about SOPPA, but, is it is it compliant with SOPPA, number one, and two, is it necessary? Is it a redundant piece of software that the curriculum that was already purchased is doing? And if it still needs to be used, then we would get the consent. I don't believe that we've come across that in our district. But if it requires the parent consent, then that'd be something we'd have to do.
Okay. A few more live questions and we'll jump back into this and then we'll get into the demo. So there's been some other questions and this one should be a pretty straight, simple answer from you, Tyler, and you, Chris. Molly asked, which access do you allow in general? Is it limited, trusted, and why do you do that?
Sorry about that. Limited, trusted, and what was the other one?
Well, it was very simple. It's just
the third one.
Yeah. Do you just allow limited or trusted or I think open
For the third party apps?
Yeah.
It would be, I believe we do like a limited trust, so that we can see what's going on, a little bit more granular detail.
Chris?
Well, we are, we're blocking them up first. When they get approved, we do limited. And then if that causes a problem, then we'll go through and trust it at that point in time. But we try to get by with the minimum first and see if that does what needs to be done. And then if we have to, we'll go back and reanalyze it and trust it at that point in time. If it passes all the litmus tests there.
All the sniff checks. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that we play a hand in that with you. So
Yes.
With that, we'll stay there. So Chris, I know this is near and dear to you. Does your district monitor and or restrict third-party apps for faculty and staff in addition to students, and why or why not?
We do. Yes, because teachers are just as clicky as kids. I mean, let's be real. I mean, some of the stuff that I've actually seen, and I'll look at some of the third-party apps just when I'm going through them and stuff. I'm like, gosh, who's clicking on this? And it's nothing but teachers and stuff. And I'm like, good Lord. So yeah, we actually, we just kind of globally keep things kind of blocked, and then they can ask if they really want that one opened, or they can just use their personal account. We do it for everybody.
Tyler?
Yeah, I would agree. The third-party apps, it's restricted for everybody, like staff and students, it doesn't matter who. The biggest thing is the human factor. So we really gotta, lock it down, restrict first, and then look into it, and then approve, because we don't want anything slipping through the cracks, essentially.
Yeah, and certainly we've, I know with both of you, we've had conversations where we've seen some shocking, maybe surprising, inappropriate apps that are being used by staff because they maybe think they're using that maybe app on their personal device, but yet they use their school issued credentials to log into that. So that's obviously a slippery slope when you get into that. So Tyler, will stick with you and come back to Chris in terms of, so you both obviously monitor them. So what steps, how do you monitor apps? Let's just jump into that. How are you monitoring apps today, controlling apps, investigating them, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, managed methods for sure helps because it gives you that broad view of all the apps that are being utilized. And for the steps, I would say if you're trying to get it under control, you need to know what's out there first. So you need to know what's out there, and then you'll need to revoke what isn't needed. But you also need to have that vetting process in place for sure. If you don't have a process in place, there's not going to be any formality to your decision making, and I think that's crucial when you're looking at these apps, so that each app, there isn't some arbitrary conversation going on. It's like you have the formalized process. For us, it's the request from the staff, and then it gets looked at with the privacy agreements, sign the SOPPA, check with the curriculum director, things like that. So I think having the formalized process is a for sure recommendation that I would make.
And do you have automation in place in terms of detecting the apps and revoking or allowing things?
Yeah, so it would be when it's detected, it's cut off first, and then I will look at it and then it will go from there, and then the conversation starts rolling with that formalized process.
And detecting it, of course, you already mentioned. I'll give it a quick point. Yeah. Chris, I know you get excited about this topic. So Chris,
it's so much fun.
Yeah. So how are you today?
We're still playing catch up. I'll be honest. We're still playing catch up. So we don't have, we're just now getting ready to start our automated notification and processes. But what we've done so far is we start with the critical stuff, see what they are, see if there's anything that catches my eye, that it's something I know we need. And basically what I did is I went in, I have both windows open at the same time. I have managed methods here, and I have my Google admin console here, have my third-party apps here, Google managed methods over here, and I go through and I can turn them off here and revoke access here. But I get the list of all the critical ones through managed methods, so I know which ones to hit first over here. So that's helped immensely. And so we basically got rid of all the high critical ones, and none of them rang any kind of bell. So I was able to get rid of them and Google and this revoke access there. So now we're on the high risk ones. And, it's amazing that some of those high risk ones are actually associated with a lot of well-known programs that we use. So we're kind of having to go through there, and I'll work with CNI. I work with our curriculum and instruction people and go, hey, this is a high risk app. And, do we really need it? What can we do? Because, I can do a limited trust on it, but if not, what we can do is we can just revoke it and see who complains. Because, some of these too, you can't tell when the last time they were accessed. And so it could be they were accessed a long time ago. They don't need them, whatever. So, some of those, if you just kind of, hate to say it, revoke access and see who complains, and then you can move forward from there. We do that. And I'll do that every once in a while. I'll just kind of look and see who's logged into them last, kind of do some double checking. Is that student even still a student? And then decide what I want to do from there. But the network guys are they're creating the policies and stuff like that on the managed method side to kind of stop it from moving forward. So they're taking the forward process, and I'm kind of doing the cleanup from the backside.
Got it. Okay. We're going to jump into the demonstration here. We're going to get back to some more audience questions because a lot of stuff coming in. But one thing, Tyler, Chris, that everyone's asking is if either one of you would be willing to share your vetting request forms and any types of process you have. And this is part of why we have these webinars. This is we are very much a birds of a feather. It takes a village type of community out there. And so if you're both willing, perhaps you would before we end the conference, put in the chat your contact information, maybe just your email for those, or you can direct people to your school district's website. So we'll come back to some more of these questions. I threw out a poll there to ask the audience, how do you control third-party apps today? Using the native tools from either Google or Microsoft, other vendor tools, managed methods, shameless plug. We currently don't. A good mix. Obviously, we have a lot of our managed methods friends out there today. Roughly about 28% of the audience is using managed methods. Thank you. But I know that many of you also rely on the nice native tools that are out there. For those of you that aren't doing anything, the 13% of you that said we currently don't do any managing of third-party apps, highly encourage you to talk about that and look into it. So speaking of looking into it, Charles, why don't you go ahead and share on the screen? Let's show the folks what we do here. This is one of the very strong suits of managed methods is that we are providing constant visibility into your Google Workspace, Microsoft 365 environments. Obviously, Tyler, Chris, both of you know this platform very well. But for those that don't, let's maybe just showcase. We're not going to get into a full demonstration of the full platform. Folks, if you'd like to do that, feel free to reach out to Managed Methods. Go to our website, managedmethods.com. You can get a demonstration or a free trial. But what we'll do today is just focus on the third-party app control piece. Go ahead, Charles.
Absolutely. So started off right away here on the Managed Methods apps tab. We're over here in the Google Workspace environment. For look and flow wise, both Google and Microsoft will be pretty similar in what you'll see between the two. Thing that always catches people's eyes are these graphs here at the top. So one of the things that the platform does is we provide categorization of applications. So this is something we do on Managed Methods, and it's a way that helps to sort the applications because there's a lot of applications out there, and it can get really messy to try to go through applications one by one or try to figure out, okay, what are some things I'm concerned about? So one of the things that both Tyler and Chris mentioned there are the issues around applications like games or social media applications or things like that. So we have these pre-built categories that are ready to go to let you dive through those categories here. So I'll use social here as just an example. You'll also see we've got more concerning things like explicit or VPN applications as well. So something like Reddit here is very, very common to see. With that, you'll get presented with that category type. We'll also provide you quickly with what permissions the application has as well too. So what scopes did the application actually have get authorized into? So something like Reddit may not have the most powerful permissions in the world, but it's still good to go through these and figure out what information is being granted. We also do a risk score as well too. So we'll categorize those risks or those applications with a risk score, and that can be based on 4 factors here. Factor 1 is, does the application have admin level access? Factor 2 will be, does the application is the application sanctioned or not? So you have the ability to come in here and tag applications as things you've vetted or trusted or known versus not there. And then we also have, does write permission factor in there? And then lastly is, what's the overall sanction percentage? So this is actually drawing from the Managed Methods user base as a whole. So as customers of Managed Methods sanction applications, approve those applications, say, yep, this is something we're good with here, that will change that sanction percentage as well. So that's how we calculate that number there. You're also able to quickly see who's using the application. I think this is extremely valuable. Probably one of my favorite features is being able to quickly see who's using that application, know right away, okay, who's actually a problem user here? Is it a student? Is it a staff member? Do we have an issue where it's a combination of both students and staff on this application? One that comes to mind right away is TikTok. It's very, very popular for both staff and students, where they'll both sign in with their school account for whatever reason and decide, yep, I want to go ahead and use that. So that's where you can use categories like social to track things down, look at the applications that way. You can't even click into the application itself as well too, and we'll even a lot of times provide a description of what that application is. So a hyperlink back to Google, back to wherever the application may have originated from. But very important there as well too is we have the ability to go through and break the connection. So that OAuth token connection can be revoked. That'll be a one-off breaking of that OAuth token permission, but then we can continuously break that moving forward via policy. Especially for the staff side, policies can be a really good way to lock things down on your staff side, especially if there's categories you don't want your staff using. Where, generally speaking, we don't need our staff using shopping applications or maybe social or things like that. But you want to leave other categories like education or tools or things like that a little bit more open, where you can have that vetting process. So that can certainly help as well too. Certainly there can be exceptions to the rule, but a lot of times that's a good way where you can get rid of applications that way. The other thing we'll also identify application-wise is access levels, and these are trying to pull through some of those applications with the more powerful permissions into in this case, the Google Workspace environment. Email especially, though files is also kind of a secondary one, is where we see a lot of those applications end up that have a lot of powerful permissions. Especially something like a racket and cashback shopping application. This is just an example here. This actually has access into people's email accounts, and that's something where, again, it doesn't make a ton of sense usually for people to be giving away this level of access. And again, that's where the vetting process is so important in figuring out, what do you have out there? Does this make sense to actually be out there in the first place? Do we want our staff or students giving away this kind of permission? And there's a lot of these applications that want probably a lot more access than I think people realize when they first just click that single sign-on button with Google. They run across and they think that's going to be great, or they just don't think about it. And then also very important are the policies themselves, and we also do have that here as well, where we'll be able to go through those various applications and get things set up that way as well too. There we can kind of go through and get things set up where the platform can take some automatic action on your behalf as well. And this is really important because this is what will keep things from not just being revoked the one time, but continuously moving forward there. So we've got some out-of-the-box policies that are ready to go, but these can always be expanded upon. So there's certain categories like things like VPN or explicit apps where district approval, you're never going to probably approve a VPN or an explicit application. I'd be pretty shocked if that ever happened. And then we have some policies like this one here that are looking more at the applications that have more high-level access into areas like email here. So this is where you can get some different policies set up that way as well. And once those policies are set, you can set it to revoke access there and go ahead and break the OAuth token connection. It'll go ahead and continuously do that moving forward there. There's also an option to warn users too. We've also seen that used in conjunction sometimes with that vetting process or things like that. Or even if you revoke access, you could also notify the user and have the message redirect to the form that says, hey, here's how you vet the application if you want to request access to this. So that can be really helpful as well too, to train users on that end there. And then you can also go ahead and certainly create your own policies too. And that can be done in a number of different ways based on things like the name of the application even, or down to the broader categories or permission types the application has. And policies can also be limited out to organizations or specific users or groups too. So all that together ties things together. And then a lot of times, as Chris mentioned, a lot of times it'll be a situation where you're working in both the Google Admin Console and in Managed Methods to help narrow down what you're looking at, help figure out what's out there, and then make those decisions on keeping your environment more secure and getting rid of things that just don't belong there in the first place.
And of course, oh, go ahead, Charles.
Sorry. Final thing I'll mention here, one thing I did forget to mention is if you do run across an application as well, and this has been very handy for applications with lots of users, we also have ways to export those users out. I think that's really valuable as well too, so you get an idea of who's actually using this application. So sorry, go ahead, David, there.
No, that's you kind of hit on it, because information sharing and of course, Tyler and Chris, I know that you're staying in tune with this, and I think many of our audience, this is why it's such a popular topic too, is for the Google users out there. Obviously, Google had announced that a while back that there was going to be some new rules put in place, and Google Workspace for Education admins have until October 23rd to review and confirm settings for third-party apps for the users designated as under 18 with the age-based access settings. And so one of the questions from the audience came up to, can we use Managed Methods to go approve and or revoke those apps? And yes, Charles, I think you just kind of showed some examples of that. But just as a public service announcement, folks, be sure to go to Google's website, Google's blog. If you're not aware of these things, let us know. We can point you in the right direction, or Chris or Tyler, I'm sure, can point you in the right direction. But there is rules are changing come end of October 23rd. With that said, why don't we just jump back? We wanted to give you a quick taste. I know some people have asked questions. How can I get access to Managed Methods? You can visit our website at ManagedMethods.com. Of course, when we send out a copy of the webinar itself, everyone will receive access, but you can go to ManagedMethods.com. You can sign up for a demonstration where you can get a private audience with Charles or another member of our product special team, or you can get a free trial. And Tyler, Chris, I know both of you, this is where we'll talk a little bit more direct about Managed Methods, because folks are asking questions. Both of you, like pretty much every one of our customers, you started out in a free trial. So Chris, I'll start with you. Maybe do you have anything you want to share to this and leave some parting words with our audience about this topic?
Yo, absolutely. We've seen, I've known David for years and stuff, and he's, hey, you need to use this product and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so finally we bit the bullet and got the free trial. And it's not just the third-party apps. I mean, we've done all sorts of stuff with this. We can see when accounts are being accessed from, some weird country. There's so many other things that you can do with Managed Methods that I had no idea. And it has really saved us several times this year, especially with as much as we're getting attacked on our Office side now, because you can also bring in your Office 365 accounts and check on that side too. And it's just amazing. It's amazing when you get those notifications that somebody from Russia is logging in with some of your staff accounts and stuff, and we can shut that stuff down immediately and prevent some of these attacks that have been going on. And I'm sure everybody out there knows that it's not going to stop anytime soon. It's just going to get worse and worse. So this is just such a better way for us to be able to kind of stay on top of some of the account side of things, and that way our network guys can, take care of our DNS attacks and all that kind of stuff. It's just a bad situation right now, and it's going to continue going. So this is, if we were to get rid of this, I think I would retire. It would be done. I'd be done.
Okay. No retirement for Chris. Diane, you didn't hear that. She's not retiring. Okay. Tyler, you went through a free trial and now use the platform. Any parting words, comments, thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think Chris made a good point. Aside from third-party apps, there's also much more that the platform can do. One of the main things that I use it for is pulling phishing emails. There's been times where the district got hit from, campaigns that are impersonating our principals and things like that. And I need to quickly go in and rip those emails out. And Managed Methods takes care of that for me. So that's one of the big ones that I use. I know Charles, with the demo, mentioned the policies. We have alerts set up for, like when Chris said, if an account gets accessed from overseas or things like that, we get notified in the ticket system. I get an email. You know, all these different things that the platform automates for us, so that we can have a faster response to things that we need to, and bring our attention to things that needs our attention. So yeah, it's great. It's one of the first tabs I open every day. So I couldn't recommend it enough, I guess.
Well, thank you both for that. And yes, that's a valid point. For today's topic was all about third-party apps that are connected into your Microsoft 365, Google Workspace environments. There is a whole other app, area. There's lots of other stuff you could see in the demonstration, many other tabs. ManagedMethods is an all-encompassing platform. Apologize to the audience for those of you that might have asked, hey, can we get a full demonstration again? Today's topic was to be focused on this topic of third-party apps. There are many ways you can certainly manage these things without ManagedMethods. I think Chris and Tyler, you both shared that your life is easier with ManagedMethods. But the main objective today, folks, was we want to raise more awareness on this topic, that regardless, we hope you would come to ManagedMethods, and we can certainly help you take advantage of our free trial and look into these things. That's why we put the free trial out there. We want to give you visibility into what you may not already have today, but there are obviously some tools available through the free components of the native platforms. There's also other third-party vendors, but we want you to first and foremost leave today's webinar with the thought of, hey, I need to make sure we are managing our third-party apps. Starts with visibility. You can't control what you don't know exists. You got to know what's connected into your environment. Then you need to understand, are these apps what we should have here? Are these apps that are not needing to be here? At the end of the day, and Chris and Tyler, I think you've pretty much elaborated on this, and I think you're in 100% agreement with us. There is no business that any application that is not being explicitly used for teaching in the classroom or some form of business function for the district, if it's not one of those things and it's not been vetted and approved by the technology department and signed off on with a license agreement, a data privacy agreement, cybersecurity checked off, et cetera, there's no business for those apps to be there. There is no, I don't care if it's staff or students, there's no business having dating, gambling, gaming, shopping, whatever it may be. Those apps have no business being in districts. So that's not the representation of ManagedMethods. That's the representation of me, David Waugh. But I think you folks would agree. I think some final questions that are out there. Of course, we shared Chris and Tyler's email information out there. Thank you, Chris, Tyler, for doing that. Any last words? Final 2 minutes before we wrap up today. Tyler, I'll stay with you. Anything final you want to share on any topic of this third-party discussion?
Yeah. So I would say just the main takeaways is if your district doesn't have a formalized process in place, I would say that would be the first thing to take care of. And part of that formalized process should be the discovery and detection of those apps, so that you can know what you have out there, and then you have your process on how to limit them and revoke access if necessary. So I would say that'd be my biggest takeaway, or my biggest promotion from today. And like I said, I couldn't recommend the product enough. So yeah, takes care of a lot for us.
Chris, any final parting words?
Totally agree. Come up with a process, and then your process doesn't have to look like either one of ours. You may just call me, or just some kind of form that you put out there, but come up with something. And then just, if you haven't looked at this, make a plan. Don't get overwhelmed. Make a plan and start nipping away at it. I usually put about an hour aside, 30 minutes, an hour aside a day, and just kind of nip at it until, you get it under control, and then move forward. You may look at yours like the way we looked at ours, and you'll be overwhelmed, but just kind of take it in little chunks.
Thank you both. And I think to answer one of the questions live that just came in, yes, our platform works with all the versions of Google, all the versions of Microsoft. It doesn't matter. Somebody asks, do I have to be on a free version or a paid version? Do I have a specific licensing level? And the short answer is no. We'll work with free, paid versions, licensed versions. We're a standalone platform. We can work in complement or as an alternative to those other versions from the vendors. Well, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us. It's great to see you again. I hadn't seen you
Yeah.
since I was down there in June. Tyler, thank you for joining in with us as well today. Of course, Charles, as always, great work. We appreciate everyone joining in today. We had well over 100 attendees in today's webinar. Way more than that signed up. Everyone, you will get a copy of today's webinar. If you have questions on this topic, we could talk all day long about this. I know that this is a very, very hot topic right now. Feel free to reach out to Chris or Tyler. Chris, Tyler, thank you so much. Don't mean to flood your inboxes, but this is what it's about.
Fine.
It's about community. Folks, keep in mind that some of the things may be specific just to Texas where Chris is, or specific to Illinois where Tyler is. Be sure to always check with your local COSIN chapter and other organizations right there within your own states, because they do vary from state to state. And of course, feel free to reach out to us here at Managed Methods. You can go to info@ManagedMethods, or just go to ManagedMethods.com. And we're here to help. We work in 40, I think we're in 45 out of 50 states now. So we're pretty familiar with a lot of the rules and regulations, and of course the national regulations as well. So Tyler, thank you very much. Chris, be sure to put on a sweater. I know it gets chilly down there. Yeah.
96 today, 96.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Tyler and Chris, greatly appreciate it. Charles Mogan, thank you so much. And on behalf of the Managed Methods team, folks, thanks for participating in today's webinar. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
You guys have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.